We're back now, as we mentioned, with a portion of my exclusive interview with British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who is here in New York for the meeting at the UN. For that matter, we'll also see him tomorrow at the G20 summit in Pittsburgh. We sat down to talk not far from where high-level meetings were taking place. The first thing I asked about were reports that he was being snubbed somehow by President Obama on this trip, allegedly over the controversial release of that Lockerbie bomber.
Well, first of all, I met President Obama last night, and we had a long talk about some of the big issues affecting us, and I'll be meeting him in Pittsburgh in a one-to-one meeting, but of course we're meeting all the time. I do say that the special relationship, the relationship between Britain and America is strong. It continues to strengthen.
Relationships soured after the release of the Lockerbie bomber. It was later reported you had said you didn't want to see the man die in prison, though you found his welcome home abhorrent.
My first thoughts were for the relatives of those people who died. I don't forget the day that the Lockerbie bombing happened, and I don't forget the suffering of all the families who have gone through years of pain and years of anguish. So let us be in no doubt. McGravie is regarded by us as the person responsible for the crime. His sentence has not been commuted. He has simply been let out by the Scottish authorities because they believe that he will die within 3 months. Now, I can understand the reaction to that. I can also understand people's feelings about Britain as a result of that. But this was a decision made on legal grounds by the Scottish administration. We could not have done anything about it.
The problem is some of your citizens will forever believe, and a fair number of Americans, that it was the result of a deal, and that deal had to do with oil.
There was no deal. I can give you an absolute and unconditional assurance. There was no deal on oil. There was no deal on anything else. There was no double dealing. There was no conspiracy. There was no prior agreement or anything. And I think we've got to put this in one perspective. Over these last 10 years, we've seen Libya try to move to a better position in the international community by renouncing nuclear weapons and at the same time renouncing any role in international terrorism. Now, we have got to hold Libya to these promises. And these are the issues, security issues, that I will continue to raise with Libya. But no deals, no backroom stitch-up of any sort. And I do assure the American people that we would never put them in that position.
Let's talk, Mr. Prime Minister, about Afghanistan. In the Iraq War, the Brits got Basra, a violent, long slog. In Afghanistan, British forces have been concentrated in Helmand Province, a long, violent slog. You've suffered 217 losses there. Will we see a substantial, dramatic reduction in forces, a reorganization on the British side of this fight?
Well, let me say, first of all, that we have a duty, all of us, a duty to prevent terrorism returning to the streets of New York or returning to the streets of London. The second thing is that the way forward in Afghanistan, even after the disputes about the election, is very clear to me. It's got to be a policy of the Afghan people, their army, their police, taking more responsibility for their own affairs. We are prepared, and always have been, to put the troops that are necessary to make sure that the training and what we call mentoring of the Afghan forces leads to an army by next year of 135,000. Our strategy is Afghanization, as you call it, which is the Afghan people taking more control of their own affairs. That is the way forward for Afghanistan, and that's the key to a safer Britain and a safer America.
Part of our conversation earlier today here in New York with Gordon Brown. It's all on our website tonight. That's nightly.msnbc.com.